Welcome to WION, Ambassador. The world is watching as the worst violence in years breaks out between Israelis and Palestinians. Give our viewers a sense of what's happening on ground in Israel.
Israel is currently experiencing a wave of large-scale terrorism, which is actually being targeted at major metropolitan areas throughout the country and at residential neighborhoods throughout the country. We have millions of people spending the nights in shelters. Hundreds and hundreds of missiles have been fired at residential areas, at all areas of Israel, including Jerusalem, a holy city. The casualty figures are really climbing as we speak. We have 6 deaths and a couple of hundred injured. An Indian caregiver was fatally injured in Ashkelon, Sumya Santosh. She has been in Israel for 10 years, and she was there as a caregiver for an elderly woman, and we are so bereaved by her death. And I think that India can actually relate, because India has also experienced cross-border violence. But I think in this case, Israel is so much smaller than India that the entire country practically experiences it. And we have people all over the country running for shelters. I don't know if you showed the pictures of people really running down the stairs into shelters. My daughter has a 3-year-old and a newborn baby. They had to wake up in the middle of the night in order to run to the shelter to the bomb shelter in their home. My other daughter lives in an older building, and so she had to run to the stairwell with her partner in order to spend the night there. So the situation is not good, and that's what's happening on the ground.
Right. Now, Ambassador, the UN is fearing a full-scale war after the deadly exchange of fire between Palestinian militants and Israeli military. What is your assessment of the situation?
Well, Israel has the right and indeed the obligation to defend its citizens. We are not going to stop defending our citizens. We are acting against terrorist organizations, Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and we are neutralizing terrorists and terrorist infrastructures. And this operation is accurate and measured. We are not targeting residential homes. We are targeting terrorist infrastructure. Hamas, who is behind the entire operation, is a murderous terrorist organization. It's responsible for the death and injury of thousands of Israelis and Palestinian civilians. The Hamas Charter is an anti-Semitic document endorsing the murder of Jews solely on the basis of their religion. The organization has been designated a terrorist organization by many countries in the world, including the US and the EU, and they're committing a double war crime, indiscriminately firing at civilian population centers while they are themselves within civilian population, using these civilians indeed as human shields.
Right. Now, we're of course getting reports of casualties on both sides. Meanwhile, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu declared a state of emergency today in Lod. He remains undeterred as he vows to defend Israel through more attacks. So will there be an escalation in violence in coming days?
Well, Israel does not want an escalation. We, in fact, at the beginning of this whole flare-up, we took de-escalatory steps in order to prevent unrest and ensure freedom of worship in Jerusalem. We stopped the entrance of Jews to the Temple Mount on Jerusalem Day, which was a really big thing for us because Jerusalem Day is a very important day for Jews. It's the reunification of the city, which was divided before that. We changed the route of the flag march. We ultimately canceled the flag march. We delayed the court hearing on the issue of Sheikh Jarrah. We showed restraint at first in the face of rockets and 200 arson attacks in the south that were caused by incendiary balloon devices. And these steps, instead of being answered with calm, have been answered with rocket attacks on Jerusalem and on cities across Israel. Hamas has situated its facilities in the heart of the civilian populations, as I mentioned before, and they're indiscriminately attacking population centers in Israel. And we want this to stop. Our main goal in this entire operation is to stop the firing of rockets by Hamas and to ensure that in the future they do not resume these attacks. That's our one and only goal in the operation. Once they stop with firing the rockets, and once we are assured that is, that they will stop, that they will not resume sometime in the future, we will be able to stop as well.
Right, that actually brings me to my next question. An Indian woman, Soumya Santosh, was killed in a rocket strike. India, of course, has condemned the violence in the region along with several other global powers. So will international intervention or mediation help in calming the situation in the region?
Well, we're asking the international community to condemn the firing of rockets on Israel. We're asking them to condemn the firing of rockets on civilian populations. If we can get to the negotiation table at some point in the future, we'll have to see about that. I really don't know at this point. But we're asking the international community to help us by condemning Hamas, condemning terrorism, condemning the firing of rockets on civilian populations.
Right. Now, despite several attempted peace deals in the past, the conflict, of course, has worsened. In fact, experts say that this will now shift the focus of U.S. foreign policy back to the Middle East. How do you see the situation evolving?
Well, we were very, very pleased with the Abraham Accords that happened over the past several months. And we see that the Arab world in general is coming closer to Israel and is starting to understand that the way to a peaceful Middle East and to a good life for their citizens is not through terrorism, but through working together, through business, through a peaceful cooperation with Israel in the region. And I hope that these countries that we have nurtured good relations with, that we have established relations with over the past several months, will not come forward and persuade the Palestinians that this is the best way forward, that this is the way to go ahead and to stop the violence and work with Israel in peace.
Right. My final question for you, Ambassador, before we wrap up our discussion. While Palestinians say their homes are being taken away from them, Israelis say that they are protecting themselves from Palestinian aggression. What, according to you, is the way forward?
I'm sorry, I lost you there.
Right, I'll repeat.
I think I know.
I'll repeat my question for you.
What you were asking.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm essentially asking, what is the way forward out of this conflict, according to you?
Well, you were asking about the homes. Sheikh Jarrah isn't the story here. Hamas is attacking Israel not because of Sheikh Jarrah, but for its declared goal of eliminating Israel. It's exploited a legal matter which is in the courts and which is playing out in the courts, and it's turned it into a nationalist and religious issue in order to bring about an escalation, violence, terrorism. And whoever links the Hamas terrorist attacks and the hundreds of rocket launches against civilian populations to the issue of Sheikh Jarrah, which is a real estate issue, which is a legal issue, which is being played out in the courts, as I said, is just playing into the hands of the terrorist organization and granting legitimacy to terrorist activities. I believe the way forward is to stop the violence, to stop the rocket firing, and to sit down together and make peace.
Right. Thank you so much for all your insights and perspectives on this issue, Ambassador. Thank you for joining us on WION this evening. And of course, will wish for more peace to prevail in the region. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.